Many people believe that if someone receives good advice, they will naturally follow it. After all, advice is often given to help people avoid mistakes, improve their lives, and achieve their goals. However, reality is very different. Every day, people ignore advice that could benefit them. They continue habits they know are harmful, postpone important decisions, and reject suggestions that could lead to positive change. One of the biggest reasons for this behavior is that people often choose comfort over change. Human beings are naturally attracted to what feels familiar. Familiar routines create a sense of safety and predictability. Even when a person knows that a certain habit is holding them back, they may continue doing it simply because it feels comfortable. The unknown can be intimidating, while familiar patterns require little effort or adjustment. As a result, many people remain stuck in situations that are less than ideal because changing them feels more difficult than tolerating them. Imagine someone who wants to become healthier. They may receive excellent advice about exercising regularly, eating nutritious foods, and getting enough sleep. They understand the benefits and may even agree with every recommendation. Yet they continue their old lifestyle. Why? Because changing daily habits requires effort. Waking up earlier to exercise, choosing healthier meals, and creating a consistent routine can feel uncomfortable at first. The comfort of existing habits often wins against the temporary discomfort of change. This tendency appears in many areas of life. Students may receive advice about studying consistently instead of cramming before exams. They know the advice makes sense, but many continue procrastinating because scrolling through social media or watching entertainment feels more enjoyable in the moment. Workers may be advised to learn new skills to advance their careers, but they postpone learning because it requires time, focus, and dedication. In each case, the challenge is not understanding the advice. The challenge is overcoming the discomfort associated with change. Fear also plays an important role. Change often involves uncertainty, and uncertainty can make people anxious. When people consider following advice, they may start thinking about everything that could go wrong. What if the new approach fails? What if they invest time and effort but do not achieve the expected results? What if they look foolish while trying something different? These questions can create enough fear to stop action before it even begins. Remaining in a familiar situation may not be ideal, but it feels safer than stepping into the unknown. Another reason people prefer comfort is that the benefits of good advice are often delayed. Most valuable changes require patience. Exercising does not transform a person overnight. Learning a skill does not immediately lead to success. Building strong relationships takes time and consistent effort. People naturally prefer immediate rewards over future benefits. This makes it difficult to stay motivated when the positive results of change may not appear for weeks, months, or even years. Comfort provides instant satisfaction. Watching television instead of studying feels enjoyable immediately. Spending money instead of saving it brings immediate pleasure. Avoiding difficult conversations prevents short-term discomfort. Unfortunately, these choices often create bigger challenges in the future. Even when people understand this, they may still choose the option that feels easiest in the present moment. This is one reason why good advice is often ignored despite being completely reasonable and beneficial. People often like to believe that they make decisions based on logic, facts, and careful thinking. We assume that when someone receives good advice, they will examine the information, recognize its value, and act accordingly. However, human behavior rarely works that way. In reality, emotions have a powerful influence on decision-making. Feelings such as pride, fear, anger, embarrassment, jealousy, and overconfidence can shape choices more strongly than logic ever could. As a result, people sometimes reject advice that could genuinely improve their lives. One of the strongest emotional barriers to accepting advice is pride. Pride can make people feel that accepting guidance is a sign of weakness. When someone points out a mistake or suggests a better way of doing something, a person may interpret it as criticism rather than help. Instead of focusing on the value of the advice, they focus on protecting their ego. They may think, "I already know what I'm doing," or "I don't need anyone telling me what to do." Even when the advice is correct, pride can prevent them from listening. This happens in everyday situations. A student may ignore a teacher's study tips because they want to prove they can succeed on their own. An employee may reject suggestions from coworkers because they do not want to appear inexperienced. A business owner may refuse expert recommendations because they believe they understand their company better than anyone else. In each case, pride creates a wall between the person and valuable information that could help them succeed. Fear is another emotion that often causes people to ignore good advice. Advice frequently encourages change, and change can feel frightening. Following advice may require taking risks, trying something unfamiliar, or leaving a comfortable situation behind. Even when people know the advice makes sense, fear can stop them from acting on it. The possibility of failure feels more real than the possibility of success. For example, someone may receive advice to start a new career, launch a business, or pursue a dream they have postponed for years. They may agree with every reason supporting the advice, yet fear begins to whisper questions in their mind. What if I fail? What if I lose money? What if people laugh at me? What if things get worse instead of better? These fears can become so powerful that the person chooses inaction. Staying where they are feels safer than facing uncertainty. Anger can also interfere with good judgment. When people are angry, they often focus on their emotions instead of the facts. If advice is given during an argument or after a disagreement, it may be rejected immediately, regardless of its quality. The person is not evaluating whether the advice is useful. Instead, they are reacting emotionally to the situation. Imagine a friend giving helpful advice during a heated discussion. The advice may be completely reasonable, but because emotions are running high, the listener may refuse to consider it. Later, after they calm down, they may realize that the advice was actually correct. This demonstrates how temporary emotions can influence important decisions and prevent people from recognizing valuable guidance. Overconfidence is another major reason people ignore advice. Confidence can be beneficial when it motivates action and persistence. However, excessive confidence can become a problem. When people believe they already know everything they need to know, they stop listening to others. They assume their judgment is superior and dismiss alternative perspectives without giving them proper consideration. History is filled with examples of talented individuals who failed because they became too confident. They ignored warnings, overlooked risks, and dismissed expert opinions. Their confidence convinced them that they could not be wrong. Unfortunately, reality often proves otherwise. No matter how intelligent or experienced a person may be, there is always something new to learn. Ignoring advice because of overconfidence can lead to costly mistakes. Another emotion that affects decision-making is embarrassment. Some people avoid following advice because doing so would require admitting they were wrong. Admitting mistakes can feel uncomfortable. It can make people feel vulnerable or exposed. As a result, they continue making poor choices simply to avoid the discomfort of acknowledging an error. Consider someone who makes a financial mistake. Friends and family may offer advice on how to correct the problem. Deep down, the person knows the advice is helpful. However, accepting it would mean admitting that their original decision was wrong. Instead of facing that reality, they continue down the same path, often making the situation worse. Their desire to avoid embarrassment becomes stronger than their desire to solve the problem. Jealousy can also influence how advice is received. People sometimes reject good advice because they dislike the person giving it. If someone is successful, others may assume their advice is not relevant or may feel resentful toward their achievements. Instead of focusing on the message, they focus on the messenger. This emotional reaction can cause them to miss valuable lessons that could benefit them. Emotions are not always negative. Positive emotions can also affect decisions. Excitement, for example, can lead people to ignore warnings and practical advice. When someone becomes extremely excited about an opportunity, they may overlook risks that others can clearly see. Their enthusiasm makes them focus only on the potential rewards while ignoring possible consequences. In these situations, good advice may seem unnecessary because emotions have already convinced them that everything will work out perfectly. The human brain often uses emotions as shortcuts when making decisions. Emotions help people react quickly, but they do not always lead to the best outcomes. Logical thinking requires time, patience, and careful analysis. Emotional reactions happen instantly. This is why people sometimes make choices they later regret. In the moment, their feelings seem convincing. Later, when emotions fade, they can see the situation more clearly. Learning to recognize emotional influence is an important skill. It does not mean ignoring emotions completely. Emotions provide valuable information about our experiences and values. However, they should not be the only factor guiding decisions. The most effective choices usually involve a balance between emotion and reason. When people pause, reflect, and evaluate advice objectively, they are more likely to make wise decisions. Understanding this principle can improve relationships, careers, education, and personal growth. Instead of immediately rejecting advice, people can ask themselves whether emotions are affecting their judgment. Are they refusing the advice because it is wrong, or because pride, fear, anger, or overconfidence is getting in the way? This simple question can reveal important truths. By recognizing the emotional forces behind their decisions, people become more open to learning, improving, and making better choices. In many cases, the advice they once ignored turns out to be exactly what they needed to hear. People often wonder why individuals ignore good advice, even when it comes from experienced parents, teachers, friends, or experts. The answer is not always pride, fear, or stubbornness. Sometimes the reason is much simpler. Many people learn best through personal experience. They need to see the results of their actions with their own eyes before they truly understand a lesson. Advice can provide information, but experience creates understanding. This is why experience is often called the greatest teacher. From childhood, people learn many important lessons through direct experience. A child may be told not to touch a hot object because it can cause pain. The warning is clear and easy to understand. Yet some children only fully grasp the lesson after they accidentally touch something hot themselves. The brief experience teaches them more effectively than 100 warnings ever could. The lesson becomes personal, memorable, and impossible to ignore. This pattern continues throughout life. People receive advice about money, relationships, education, health, and career choices. They often understand the words being spoken, but understanding words and understanding reality are not always the same thing. Sometimes a person must live through a situation before the lesson truly becomes meaningful. Until then, advice can seem like a theory rather than a fact. Consider a student who is repeatedly advised to study consistently throughout the semester. Teachers explain the benefits of regular preparation and warn about the risks of procrastination. The student listens politely but continues delaying their work. Everything seems fine at first. There is plenty of time before exams, and the consequences feel distant. Then exam season arrives. The student becomes overwhelmed, stressed, and unprepared. After experiencing the pressure and disappointing results firsthand, the lesson suddenly becomes real. The advice that once seemed unnecessary now makes perfect sense. The same principle applies to financial decisions. Many young people receive advice about saving money and avoiding unnecessary spending. They are told that small savings can grow over time and provide security in the future. However, these benefits often feel distant and abstract. Spending money on immediate pleasures seems far more attractive. It is often only after facing financial difficulties or unexpected expenses that the importance of saving becomes clear. The experience teaches a lesson that words alone could not fully communicate. Relationships provide another example. Friends and family may warn someone about unhealthy behavior in a relationship. They may notice signs of dishonesty, disrespect, or incompatibility. They offer advice because they care and want to help. However, the person involved may not listen. Their emotions, hopes, and personal feelings make it difficult to accept the warnings. Eventually, if problems develop exactly as predicted, the individual gains a deeper understanding of the advice they once ignored. Through experience, they learn lessons about trust, communication, and healthy relationships. One reason experience is such a powerful teacher is that it creates emotional impact. Advice often remains intellectual. People hear words and process information, but the lesson may not feel important. Experience, on the other hand, involves emotions. Success brings pride and satisfaction. Failure brings disappointment and regret. These emotions strengthen memory and understanding. As a result, Lessons learned through experience tend to stay with people for a long time. Experience also removes doubt. When advice is given, people sometimes question whether it applies to them. They may think that their situation is different or that they will achieve a different outcome. They believe they can avoid the mistakes others made. This belief is common, especially among young people who are still developing confidence and independence. Personal experience often eliminates this uncertainty. Once someone faces the actual consequences of a decision, the lesson becomes much harder to deny. History contains countless examples of individuals who learned through experience. Inventors, entrepreneurs, athletes, and leaders frequently failed before achieving success. Many received advice along the way, but some of their most valuable lessons came from mistakes and setbacks. Failure taught them what worked and what did not. Their experiences provided knowledge that could not have been gained from theory alone. In many cases, those difficult experiences became the foundation of future success. However, learning through experience has both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that the lessons are usually powerful and memorable. People often develop wisdom, resilience, and practical knowledge through their experiences. The disadvantage is that some lessons can be costly. Mistakes may result in lost opportunities, damaged relationships, wasted time, or financial hardship. This is why advice remains important. Good advice allows people to learn from the experiences of others without suffering every consequence themselves. Unfortunately, human nature often makes this difficult. Many individuals believe that they need to discover things on their own. They want to test ideas personally rather than simply accept someone else's perspective. This desire for independence is not necessarily negative. In fact, it can encourage curiosity, critical thinking, and personal growth. However, it can also lead people to ignore valuable guidance that could save them from unnecessary difficulties. As people grow older, they often begin to appreciate advice more. Experience teaches them that many warnings and recommendations were given for a reason. They realize that parents, teachers, mentors, and experienced individuals were not trying to control them. Instead, they were sharing lessons they had already learned. This realization often increases a person's willingness to listen and learn from others. The relationship between advice and experience is not a competition. Both are important. Advice provides knowledge before action. Experience provides understanding after action. The wisest individuals learn to combine both. They listen carefully to the experiences of others while also remaining open to learning from their own successes and failures. This approach allows them to grow more quickly and avoid some unnecessary mistakes. Ultimately, experience remains one of life's most effective teachers because it transforms information into understanding. People may hear advice many times without changing their behavior. Yet one personal experience can completely alter their perspective. The lesson becomes real because they have lived it themselves. They no longer rely solely on someone else's words. They have seen the consequences, felt the emotions, and gained first-hand knowledge. This is why some individuals ignore excellent advice until they encounter the results of their choices. It is not always because they are careless or stubborn. Sometimes they simply need to experience the lesson personally before they can fully understand its value. While advice can point people in the right direction, experience often provides the deepest understanding. Together, they help people develop wisdom, make better decisions, and navigate life's challenges more effectively. In the end, the lessons people learn through their own experiences often become the ones they remember for the rest of their lives.